Hello and welcome. Oh boy. Today we're going to be talking about what is an LLC. That's right. What is a limited liability company? It's not the same thing as a corporation. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. A limited liability company is not what's considered a limited liability corporation. In fact, limited liability corporations don't exist. It's not the same thing. Okay? Just let's put that out there right now. LLCs are different than corporations. They're meant to be different. We're going to talk about those differences so that you can be educated. One of my favorite thing to do, I got to tell you, is work with clients that are educated. That's one of the reasons why I do all of these videos, is not because I enjoy getting to know my clients. I enjoy getting to know you, but my goal is because an educated consumer is a better consumer. An educated consumer means that when we work together, we're on the same page from the beginning. We don't have to figure things out. This is stuff that I talk about all the time to my clients. And so I'm sharing this wisdom with you. I'm sharing this knowledge with you because it'll make you a better consumer and it'll help you with your business more. All right. So if you're new here, my name is Taylor Darcy from Think Legal, where I help people and businesses thrive. So welcome. I go live Monday through Friday, except for holidays and the occasional day off. I do need those once in a while. At 11 right now, like literally it's 11:01 right now. This is when I go live. So show up, come with questions. I love questions. I love helping and answering questions. That's one of the reasons why I teach. I also teach. Can you believe that? Like all the things I do, like I'm on every platform and I teach and I'm everywhere. I mean, that's what I do. I teach. I love to teach. I love to help. That's what I do. So please join me because, let's hang out, have fun, enjoy some music. I'll switch it up a bit. Let's do it. All right, let's get started, shall we? All right. Thanks. Welcome back. Okay. So, as I talked about earlier, what is a limited liability company? Now, it is not a corporation. They are not the same. They don't have the same rules to apply to them. So, we're going to do a very high level. Please chime in if you have any questions or leave if you're not able to attend the live. Totally get that. Make sure you leave your questions below in the comments. I try to answer them as quickly as I can. I don't always get to them as fast as I want to, but come live if you can't, if I don't answer it quickly, because that's a lot better, easier way to get your questions answered. So, all right. So a limited liability company is a state-authorized entity. Okay. It's not a human being. It doesn't exist in that. So you have to consider it being something different than a human being. Right? Like a human being can actually receive documents. I can put documents in your hands and you can accept them. And so they're treated differently than a human being in the respect that, like, for instance, you need what's called a registered agent. Now, we're not going to talk about that right this second, and the reason for that is simple. A registered agent is someone who accepts legal documents on behalf of the company. We'll talk about that in a minute. So, because it's a state authorized entity, it can be revoked. You as a human being can't be revoked, right? There's a lot of process that goes with that. A state authorized entity has different compliance. You have to comply differently with that than you do as a human being. All you have to do as a human being is exist, don't break the laws, and you're good to go, right? Like there's really not much to it. A limited liability company has requirements you have to follow in order to be in compliance with the laws. The state is authorizing you to do business. It's not the same thing as a fictitious business name, but it's to do business in the name of this LLC. And in exchange, you're agreeing to treat it like a business, to treat it like a company, right? So it's very important that you understand that a limited liability company is a complete, separate, distinct entity from yourself, okay? And you have to treat it like that. And this is where people get themselves in trouble. I can't tell you how often this happens, where people start taking money from their business account and paying for personal expenses and all sorts of stuff. Like it can get messy quick. Now, it's a big deal. And unfortunately, a lot of smaller businesses don't think it's a big deal because, well, it's just them or it's just them and their partner. But it is a big deal because it can create risk. And the whole point of an LLC is to reduce your risk. Okay? It does not eliminate. The whole thing is it's called a limited liability company, not a no liability company. Okay? So I wanted to be very clear. Just because you have an LLC does not eliminate your risk. It doesn't eliminate the obligations that you have to comply with the law. So it's very important that you know exactly what you're getting yourself into when you do an LLC, because while they are great entities, if you don't keep up with what you're supposed to, they not only can be revoked, they can be what's called the corporate veil. I know it's not a corporation, but the term still applies in this instance. The veil between your personal assets, and we're going to talk about that in a second, your personal assets and the business assets can be pierced. Okay? And there's certain instances in which that's true. So, a limited liability company provides limited liability. And you're like, well, duh, it's in the name. But unfortunately, people still get this confused. So they think that they can't be sued if they're running their business as an LLC. The farthest thing is that's not accurate. You can absolutely still be sued, especially if you don't treat it like an LLC. If you don't keep things separate, if you don't treat it like a complete separate entity, you absolutely can be sued. So what does it mean by limited liability? The official, if you maintain your complete distinctiveness, properly assets, all of this stuff, a limited liability company, your liability is limited to the assets that are encapsulated in the LLC or in the LLC's name. So I always like to use like a bubble, right? Everything that is named in the LLC is considered a part of the LLC. So they're the assets of the LLC. If it's in the name of the LLC, then that's what you're limited to. So what it does is it creates a distinct difference between your personal assets and the assets of the business. For instance, the easiest one for most people to understand is an LLC will not cover your personal residence. So if you have a home, and as long as your home is not in your LLC, then typically that asset is not available for creditors. Versus if you are a rental income person, okay, where you have different rental properties, and all of those are in an LLC or in an LLC per rental property, and these are all strategic questions that you should definitely consult with an attorney about, then those properties are subject to that LLC, which means that if there's a creditor or if there's a lawsuit, that type of thing, then you're limited to what's encapsulated in that LLC. So in that bubble, right? Okay. If it's outside that bubble, it can't typically be used. Okay. So it's very important that you put the assets that are appropriate for an LLC to be put into an LLC. So if you are doing a rental business, a rental property business, awesome. Absolutely great. We're going to talk about that in a different day. But if you're doing that rental property, the last thing you want to do is spread that risk out over too many properties. So I generally recommend having one LLC per one property. Okay. Plus, they're easier to sell. An LLC transfer versus an escrow transfer is very different, but I digress. So the limited is limited to the assets that are part of the LLC. So you have to have some assets in an LLC. If you don't have any assets in the LLC, that's a reason why they can actually pierce the corporate veil. They can pierce that veil between your assets and the LLC's assets. So you can't just be like, oh, I've got an LLC, I'm not going to put anything in it, so I don't have to worry about that, right? No, you can't do that. Like they're not stupid. So you need to make sure that your LLC is properly funded. There needs to be a sufficient amount of capital in the LLC to the balance between the assets and the liabilities, okay? Or it's considered undercapitalized, okay? So that's the limited liability company portion. Now, to kind of get a little bit more, a limited liability company is owned by its members, okay? They're like shareholders, but it's not the same. They're not identical to each other. A corporation is different. We're going to talk about that in a few points. So I'm not going to leave you hanging here. I've got your back here. Okay. So it's owned by its members, but it can be managed by someone else. Typically, most members manage their own LLCs to begin with. Once they get bigger, then they get someone else to manage it. CEO, that type of thing, president. So it's a more compact entity than a corporation, okay? And we'll talk about the corporation in just a few points, in a few minutes. The other thing an LLC provides, which is one of the reasons why they're so amazing, is an LLC provides pass-through taxation. Now, that's a fancy way of saying you're not paying extra taxes on it like you are for a corporation, or potentially for a corporation. So an LLC being a pass-through tax entity for a single member LLC, it is what's, from the IRS's perspective, considered a disregarded entity. So that means you total up all of your assets, you total up all of your liabilities, all your expenses, everything, and whatever goes through to you, whatever you buy, whatever is paid to you, becomes your taxable income. Okay? So it allows you to look like a sole proprietor, but act, or for tax purposes, it allows you to be a business, but have the benefit of the sole proprietor factor of not paying double taxation as you do in a corporation. Now, it's a little bit different for a multi-member LLC. So if you're going to business with more than one partner, then, or more than one person, sorry, then it's a multi-member LLC, and it is taxed as a partnership. Okay, those are the default rules. Now, here's the best part about LLCs. That's going to be like my bonus little extra something. So don't leave yet. Okay, if you made it this far, don't leave yet, because I'm going to give you a bonus why an LLC is like the best entity most of the time. This is not true every time. There are exceptions, and it's important that you get the proper legal advice. Do not rely on friends and family and Google for what you should do. This is just for informational purposes. Deciding what you choose to get your business entity as should be a discussion between you and your attorney. Do not go to an accountant for this. They are great for accounting, and they are great for taxes, and I will always tell you to go to your CPA to do your taxes and to discuss the tax benefits of your entities. But as far as for like liability and entity selection purposes, I've had them do it wrong so many times. So I beg of you, I plead with you, go to the people that know, go to the people that can help you, give you the best answer possible, okay? Because there's a lot we can do, but fixing mistakes is harder and more expensive than if you do it right the first time. So please keep that in mind. I don't give tax advice for a darn good reason, because I'm not a tax attorney. I'm not a tax accountant. That's the same thing I expect my accountants to do when I send them people, is not to give legal advice, right? So I digress. So because it's a pass-through taxation entity, it can be very good for profit and loss purposes. And so that's why it's a very versatile entity. So a limited liability company is a hybrid between a corporation and either sole proprietor, if you're a single member LLC, and a partnership. Okay, so because it's a hybrid, it has some of the benefits of a corporation and some of the benefits of a sole proprietor or partnership, and they've basically combined it together to give you the best of both worlds. Okay, there's almost no downside to having an LLC. unless you're in California, in which case there is a downside to having an LLC in general, which is because of the minimum tax for LLCs of $800. So not optimal, but it's there. But that's California. Other states, your mileage may vary. Don't think that if talk to your attorney in your local area is the best answer I can give you. But because it's a hybrid, it doesn't have the same level of formalities that are required in a corporation. Okay. So a corporation requires more corporate formalities, minutes, resolutions, bylaws, that type of thing. An LLC only requires an operating agreement to get going. It's meant for smaller entities. That's the benefit of it. Now, you can convert from one entity to another, so don't feel like that you're stuck with an LLC if you don't want to be. And you can also convert from a corporation to an LLC, or from an LLC to a corporation. So depending on your needs. This is why it's important to get your legal advice from an attorney and not from an accountant, because sometimes they've done that wrong and it's painful for me to fix. Or it's expensive, I should say, relative to if we just do it right the first time. All right. So because it's not a corporation, here's one of the things that a lot of people get incorrect. Oh, a corporation must be better. No, a corporation is more well known. The liability shield between a corporation and an LLC are identical to each other. There is no difference. You get the same limited liability in a corporation that you do in an LLC. The only difference is you don't have to keep up with the same corporate formalities of the corporation as an LLC. It's not the same entity. So you're getting the best of both worlds, but keep in mind there's also some downsides to LLCs. They're not perfect entities. They're just very good. And even a corporation is not a perfect entity. They're very good, okay? A corporation has what's called double taxation. The shareholders are taxed on their earnings, and the corporation is taxed on their earnings. Now, you can kind of play with this a bit through the S-Corporate tax designation, but at the end of the day is that it's important that you keep in mind that there is no perfect entity. There's very, very good, but in anybody that says otherwise, that there's, oh, this is what I did, so you should do it too, isn't completely grasping the pros and the cons of each entity. Some instances I'll recommend an LLC, and others it'll be a corporation. It depends on the needs and goals of that client. So keep these thoughts in mind when you're doing it, is that you don't know what you need that work with your goals. Okay. So, and here's the bonus. Here's the magic. Here's where I want you to go, yeah. Okay. So an LLC can be taxed, as I mentioned earlier, as a pass-through entity, which is the disregarded. So you're taxed as a sole proprietor or a partnership, but it can also, and here's the magic, can also receive the S-Corporate tax designation, which is absolutely phenomenal. Okay, the S-Corporate tax designation on an LLC basically creates a different way of saving on money on taxes. Now, I said I won't give you tax advice, and I will not give you tax advice. I will say that which one is right for you, that's what you should definitely talk to a CPA about. Because in some instances, it makes sense to do the S-Corporate tax designation. In other instances, it does not. Talk to your CPA. Talk to your bookkeeper. They will know your individual situation better than I will as far as for tax purposes. So please, if you need a CPA, try looking at your local chamber of commerce or talk to your attorney because typically we have relationships with bookkeepers and CPAs and whatnot. So don't feel like that you have to go this alone or that you have to go without it. But please get the advice that will help you build a strong, safe business that can develop into what type of business that you want it to be. This isn't related to LLC, but it is tangentially. I want you to think about for just a second the biggest difference between a successful business and an unsuccessful business is mindset. Have you made your mind up to be in business, or are you just doing it as a side hustle? While that's perfectly fine, You can do a side hustle. I'm not going to tell you you can't do a side hustle. The problem is that most people treat their full-time gig as a side hustle, even when it's their full-time gig. So changing your mindset from it's a side hustle to it's a full-time gig, or from employee to being a business owner, can have huge, dramatic consequences for your success, because you will approach problems differently when you're approaching it from a business owner perspective over an employee owner perspective or an employee perspective, right? An employee just wants to go to work, do their job, get their paycheck, come home. Yes, they want to contribute to the company, and rightly so. They want to have a better company, but they're not necessarily there to grow the company, right? That's not necessarily their objective. As the business owner, it is your goal, or should be your goal, to grow the company. And one of the strongest things that I see is people that are committed to their goals by investing in doing their business the right way are more successful than businesses or people that just kind of half it. They don't care, or they think, oh, I don't have the money. Well, here's the thing. You want to be successful, you have to spend money. Like, there's nothing in this world that equals free. There's things that you can get away with. Don't get me wrong. You don't have to blow your entire budget on forming in a business entity. But if I had to pick the two places where you should spend your money at, it would be accounting / financial advice and legal. And I know I'm saying that, and you might be thinking, well, of course you're saying that. You're biased. You're an attorney. This is what you do. But those are the foundational principles that you need to embrace as a business owner, right? Those are your foundation. You want a good business, you want to have a business that lasts more than a couple of years, then start by creating a good foundation. Start by giving yourself the tools to be successful in that category. So keep that in mind, that it's not just about the money. It's about creating a foundation and having it allow you to grow, having you be successful because of that foundation. I see this time and time again. The people that invest in their business are more successful than those that don't. That isn't a guarantee. I'm not suggesting that if you absolutely positively invest in your business by getting an LLC, that you will absolutely be successful. It's not accurate, but you're more likely to be successful. Okay? So I want you to keep that in mind when you're doing this. So this is it. What is a limited liability company? All of these things that we just talked about. If you have questions, make sure to leave them in the comments below. Or, like I said, come and see me live at 11, Monday through Friday. Except for holidays, I won't be here. But feel free to watch some of my old videos. As I said yesterday, and which was so exciting, I'm at over 200 videos on here. I have 750 subscribers. That may not seem like a lot considering the millions that are out there for channels. But let me let you in on a little secret. I'm not here for the masses. I'm here for the individual. Because if I can help one person live a better life and have a better company because of what I did through these videos, then that's what I'm here for. That's why I do what I do. Okay? So keep that in mind, is that each one of you, thank you sincerely from the bottom of my heart for subscribing to my channel. I mean it. It means a lot to me that you would take that moment and subscribe and or like my pages, whatever you're doing and whatever channel you're at. Thank you so much. I sincerely appreciate it. And don't forget, if you have gotten value out of this video, don't forget to hit subscribe and like. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great one.